Hello, beautiful people. So, again, October is Hoodoo Appreciation Month, of which I had no idea that it actually existed. And again, Hoodoo is not necessarily something that I subscribe to because it's not what we called it. It just was a way of life for us and for me. And so now that it has a name, because certain people always feel that everything has to be named and they are the ones who should name it, I'm going to be going through some of the things that I lived with and experienced and things that we actually did growing up. And that is just engraved in our culture, being Gullah Geechee people. It's just something that we did. Now, hoodoo itself is not something that is just specific to Gullah Geechee people. It runs in and throughout the South when it comes to the African American culture. Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee was a huge, hub of hoodoo. And you also have it from Mississippi all the way up to Virginia, of course, in the southern states where you had the slave trade, So the first thing is the interpretation of dreams. Interpreting dreams was something that was very big growing up, especially with the older people, with the older women in particular. If you would tell them your dream, they would be able or try to go ahead and interpret it and tell you what that dream meant. If there was a dream about fish, some of you may know that that would mean pregnancy. So if that person dreamt about fish, then someone in their vicinity or very close to them or a family member was most likely pregnant. Now, this was something that I found to be very true. So they were pretty accurate most of the times. All right. Another thing about dreams in the Gullah Geechee culture is we were always told that if we were dreaming, if you had any control or you were able to, they would always tell you not to take anything from someone in a dream. And I have recollection of this, because I had a couple dreams where someone that had just passed was trying to give me something. Specifically, they were trying to give me a hat. It was the brother of the man that I was with at that time, and he had passed away. And so I was lying next to him, and he tried to give me a hat. And I did not take the hat, because it's always ingrained in us not to take anything from someone in a dream, because that means they're offering you something in order to take someone else away. All right. So another thing that we do in the Gullah Geechee culture that some may consider hoodoo is putting Spanish moss inside of your shoes. Now, moss, it comes on the trees, and you would take it out and put it in your shoe, and it would help with high blood pressure. Something else that we did and we drank a lot of and the older people swore by was life everlasting tea. Some people say it's illegal. Technically, I do not believe it's illegal. I think that rumor was just put out there because of all of the health benefits of the tea. So I think that rumor was put out so that we would not use the tea anymore, because it's not something that I see anymore on a regular basis. It would grow everywhere, and it would be used a lot for different ailments. As far as relationships are concerned in the Gullah Geechee culture, things that I would hear, this is not something I've ever done, but I have heard of people doing this, and this is something that is said when it comes to relationships, that if you bury a man's drawers or underwear in the backyard, he won't be able to leave you. If you put his shoes under the bed, he'll always come home. Now, there was certain times where women would do this because they had a man that went off to war, or he was going on a long journey and they just wanted him to make it home alive. All right. Another thing that is huge in the Gullah Geechee culture is red rice. Now, red rice is a offshoot of jollof rice from West Africa. And so the guys anyway, men would always be told, do not eat everybody's red rice. And so I'm going to try to keep this as clean as possible, but they would be told not to eat everyone's red rice because the thought was some women would put some of their monthly cycle side of the rice, and that would draw the man in and tie the man's soul or spirit to them. Okay. So that's something that men were often told and still are often told, don't eat everybody's red rice. All right. Another thing is burning hair. So if we would get our hair combed or shampooed or straightened or anything like that, any stray hair would often be burned because the thought was and still is that if birds get a hold of it, you would get a headache. And also you wouldn't want anyone else to be able to get their hands on your hair so that they wouldn't be able to make any, likenesses of you, if you catch my drift of where I'm going with that. Wearing clothes on the wrong side and sleeping opposite on your bed or sleeping with your head to the foot of the bed. They said, and it's said in the Gullah Geechee culture that a hag will ride you if you wear your clothes on the wrong side or if you sleep at the opposite side of the bed. And if you don't know what a hag is, it's also called a haint. And it's basically sleep paralysis, if you wanted to give it a scientific term. It's the essence or the feeling that someone, is usually a woman, as someone is holding you down. You can't move, you can't do anything, you can't talk. You're just sitting there or laying there in a dormant state, and you don't have any functions of your body. So that's called being ridden by a hag or a hag riding you. All right. Another thing in the Gullah Geechee culture that you can still see if you travel anywhere down in the Sea Islands is blue bottles. So blue bottles are said to catch evil spirits. And also if you hear the wind passing over the blue bottles and you hear that sound, that swishing sound, that means that the soul or the evil spirit is caught in the bottle. Now, another thing that is done there, and my family actually did, was they would paint the houses or the shutters on the house blue, because blue is said to keep evil spirits away. Now, if you go and you look up the latest natural disaster that they had down in Hawaii or Maui, they said a lot of the houses that had roofs that were blue, the storm passed over it. So there's something to be said about energy passing over things that are blue. And of course, like I said, that goes back in the Gullah Geechee culture because, like I said, they would use blue bottles to catch evil spirits, or still use blue bottles to catch evil spirits. And they would paint, certain parts of the whole house blue. Now, another thing is you have indigo, which was something that's used heavily in the African American culture, and we were used as slaves to actually make. And it was also made in Africa, the color indigo. So that has a lot to do with the fact that the blue bottles or indigo colored bottles are used to catch the spirits. Jumping the broom is something you see a lot in the African American community. It is not specific to the African American community because I have read that there are other cultures that actually did this. However, I cannot authenticate where it started, but it is something that we do a lot, and it does come from the slavery era because we were not legally allowed to get married and have a contract of marriage. So jumping the broom was a symbol of, jumping into something new and leaving out the old, or getting rid of the old. Okay. Also, another thing as far as the broom is concerned is in the Gullah Geechee culture, we're always told as women, young ladies, do not let anybody sweep your feet because that means you'll never get married. I'm not exactly sure of the source of that. All I do remember is we were always told that. I was raised by my grandmother, so I have an old soul and a lot of old old type characteristics and personality traits. However, we were always told that she could feel and she can smell that the rain was coming. Now, if someone had arthritis, their body would always start to pain before a storm, a thunderstorm, or it started to rain. And also, you can smell when rain is coming. It's not necessarily being able to see it, like it being cloudy, even if it wasn't cloudy. Like you can just have a sense, or sense it in the air that rain is coming. But yeah, the older people would always say, "Oh, I can feel the rain coming. My bones are doing this, or my joints are doing that." As far as New Year's is concerned, the food that you eat is a quote unquote hoodoo practice. Eating collard greens or some type of greens to bring in the new year is said to bring you prosperity or money in the new year. Also, eating Hoppin' Johns was also to bring you in good luck in the new year. Another thing is not putting your purse on the floor. We were always told as young ladies, do not put your pocketbook on the floor because you would go broke. Something else that we do down in the Gullah Geechee culture that some may consider hoodoo is passing a baby over a casket. So if there is a newborn baby or the youngest baby that's a relative or the child of the person that passed away, the child or the baby would be passed over the casket. And it is said to keep the spirit at bay so that the spirit or the person who passed away would not haunt or taunt or bother the new baby in any way. This is something that I have seen and still see practiced. When my son's father passed away, this is something that we did. We passed him over the casket of his father. Another thing that we do in the Gullah Geechee culture that might be considered hoodoo, folklore, or superstitious, or whatever the case may be, because again, people just have to name stuff, is being buried by water. Gullah Geechee people are naturally probably buried by water because that's just the nature of being a Gullah Geechee, is the fact that you're raised on the water or near water. So some like to be buried near the water. And this is a picture of the monument on Dafuski Island in South Carolina. It's a pretty isolated island. You have to take a ferry to get there. And the slaves or the black people that lived there would be purposely placed and buried very, very close to the water, to the river, because it is said that the soul would travel back to Africa, that the water would be a conduit in taking the soul back to Africa. And this is something that I deem and ring very true because I've always had a very, very deep desire to be buried back home. No matter where I was in the world, I would always say, bury me at home. And I didn't understand why it was so ingrained in my spirit to be buried at home. And that is probably why. It's because I have a deep desire for my soul to travel back to wherever it belongs, wherever that may be. So I want to thank you all for watching. If you have any Gullah Geechee or hoodoo rituals or things that are practices that you think might be hoodoo, share it with me, because a lot of this stuff just came back to me as I was making this video. And like I said, we do not call it hoodoo. We do not give it a term or a label. It's just a way of life for us because, you know, maybe someone in the past, an ancestor or relative or something, they had an experience and then all of a sudden they would tell everybody that experience and people would start doing it. Or maybe it was a certain grass or root or herb or something like that that someone saw that worked, and then, you know, a whole culture just started doing that. So again, I just wanted to say, you know, don't allow other people, not even your own people who have been taught and mentally enslaved by other people to tell you that every single thing is evil. Everything is not evil that we do, because even the slave masters in these other cultures and communities, they came to us for healing. So if it was all evil and witchcraft, then they wouldn't participate or partake. It's just when it comes to us, and if it's something that's actually beneficial, then it's labeled and termed evil or demonic or witchcraft or whatever the case may be. But yes, hoodoo is not necessarily something that's evil. Anything that you do can be considered evil. It's just your intentions. What are your intentions when you do it? Okay, because we're just not a solely evil person or people at the core. That's just not our nature, you know. So a lot of these things were just used for healing, and because they were beneficial to us, they were labeled, so that it would alienate us from doing what was cultural or beneficial for us. So I want to thank you all for listening. Please share your experiences and be blessed.